He was a famous world champion in that era of boxing, which is still called golden today. He instilled fear in everyone, including Muhammad Ali, and his left hook is considered to be one of the most terrible blows in the history of boxing. He was a simple village hard worker and became one of the greatest fighters of all time. Two of the best fights of the 20th century took place with his participation, and in one of them he won. Today we remember the legendary fights of Joe Frazier and reveal the secret of how a half-blind boxer managed to write his name in the history of boxing.
Yeah. Were you ever scared of anybody in the ring? Now be honest. Ali? I mean,
it's strange. I wasn't afraid of Muhammad. I lost the title to Muhammad, but I remember Joe Frazier. He was the toughest guy I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
Smoking Joe Frazier.
Anybody that ever saw him fight and understand the game of boxing will tip their hat to Mr. Frazier.
Joe Frazier was considered one of the best body punchers in the history of boxing, as well as the owner of the fastest and hardest left swing. The basis of his style was the constant pressure on the opponent. He seemed to stick to the opponent, relentlessly following him throughout the space. He threw a lot of punches, fighting with the Brazilian slogan, "You will hit me a lot, and I will hit even more and harder." The name of Joe Frazier opens the history of WBA champions. Smoking Joe became the first WBC champion. Frazier is the first absolute alphabetic world champion who unified the WBC and WBA titles. By the way, the IBF and WBO had not yet arisen at that time. It is with Frazier that the line of absolute alphabetic champions begins, which ended in 1978 and was reborn in a new line of 9 years later. Joseph William Frazier was born on January 12, 1944 in Beaufort, South Carolina. He was raised in a rural community of Beaufort called Laurel Bay. Joe's parents, Dolly Alston Frazier and Reuben, were sharecroppers and were directly dependent on the owners of the land on which they farmed, so to support the family, his father had to run a shady business selling self-made alcohol. According to the confessions of the future boxer, they had little money, but they were enough to keep the house, and they could not count on more during the period of racial segregation. Joseph was the 12th of 13 children in the Frazier family, and after his younger brother David passed away, he remained the youngest in the family. A big role in the development of the future champion in childhood was played by his father, who supported him in all endeavors.
He was always with me when I needed him. My dad was always a hero to me.
In the early 50s, a black and white TV appeared in the family. In the evenings, the whole district gathered in the Frazier house, mostly watching boxing matches, which, by the way, young Joe at that time was of little interest. Once, his uncle Ismail noticed the physical resemblance of the boy to the legendary American heavyweight Joe Louis, and this comparison was very flattering for Frazier Jr. From that moment on, 8-year-old Joe was on fire with the idea of becoming a professional boxer. He built a kind of punching bag out of burlap and rags, stuffed it with corn cobs and a few bricks, and honed his punches on it daily. During the day he worked in the field, and in the evenings he practiced with a homemade projectile.
For the next 6 or 7 years, I hit this bag every day for an hour. I wrapped my hands in my dad's tie or my mom's or sister's stockings. There were no gyms in Beaufort that allowed black people to work out, so everything I could train on, it's that heavy bag.
The family did not take little Joe's bravado about future success in boxing seriously. At a young age, he received 2 severe injuries that would affect his professional boxing career to a greater or lesser extent in the future.
Frazier had a strong right to the body, but he relied mainly on his left hook to finish the opponent.
In the future, Joe Frazier will become famous for his left hook, thanks to which he will knock out many of his opponents. He will receive this blow from a boar's yes, you heard right. Everything happened as follows. One day, while looking after the pigs on his father's farm, he decided to tease a huge domestic boar. The boar suddenly broke the fence and chased Joe. The boar caught up and knocked little Joe to the ground and broke his left arm at the elbow. At that time, he was unable to receive quality medical care, which caused the bones to grow together incorrectly. He could no longer straighten his arm completely, only at an angle. But this angle has become ideal for the legendary left swing. And in the 60s, while working with a speed bag, a piece of metal shavings hit him in his left eye and scratched him, because of which he was almost half blind. At the start of his career, Joe was friends with some doctors who helped him keep this secret a secret. He even had to memorize the vision test chart. Health problems, as well as the lack of boxing coaches in South Carolina ready to take on the completely unprepared Frazier, forced him to temporarily forget about the dream of becoming the new Joe Louis. At the age of 14, he decided to leave school due to employment on the farm, and a little later, Joe met his future wife Florence, who gave birth to his first child a year later. The very young Frazier now needed to provide for his family himself. After a while, a serious racial conflict with the owners of the land added to the difficulties, because of which Joe was fired. After that, Frazier decided to leave the south of the country and go to work in New York, where for some time he worked odd jobs and traded in car theft. He later moved to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where he was given a job in a slaughterhouse. It was then that he developed a habit that would later be reflected in the famous film Rocky by Sylvester Stallone.
You're breaking the ribs.
My job was to clean up all the blood after butchering the meat. Sometimes early in the morning I would go down to where the carcasses were hanging and pound on them, practicing my blows. Stallone took this into his film, and also how I trained by running the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Art.
Leading a quiet lifestyle, Frazier began to rapidly gain weight. This circumstance seriously worried him, and in 1961 he decided to try his luck in boxing by signing up for training at the Police League gym, where Coach Yank Durham noticed him and offered to try out as an amateur. It was Durham who instilled in Frazier an aggressive style of fighting, aimed at an abundance of movements around the ring, the priority of dodging attacks before blocking them, as well as using the left hook, which later, despite a childhood injury, and perhaps thanks to it, will become his crown blow. It was then that the boxer got his famous nickname Smoking Joe because of the manner in which he inflicted a huge number of blows on the enemy. Durham often told him, "Hit so that the gloves smoke."
When I step into the ring, I don't feel sorry for anyone. I'm there to win no matter what.
Despite a certain slenderness for heavyweight, height 182 centimeters with a span of 185 centimeters, he had no equal in amateurs. For 3 years in a row, from 1962 to 1964, he became the winner of the Golden Gloves tournament and was one of the candidates for the U.S. team for the 1964 Olympic Games in Tokyo. However, in the qualifying match, he suffered his first defeat in his career, losing a controversial decision to Buster Mathis, and actually remained out of the games. Frazier took the defeat painfully, and in order to support the promising boxer, the U.S. National Olympic Committee invited him to go to Tokyo as a substitute. As a result, Frazier was lucky soon Mathis was injured, and Smokin' Joe was announced instead of him. He knocked out all opponents in the preliminary rounds, and in the final fight he defeated the German Hans Huber, despite a broken finger of his left hand. After winning the gold medal at the Olympics, Frazier decided to turn to professional boxing. In the first 2 years, he won all 13 fights, 11 of them by knockout. In 1966, Eddie Futch joined his coaching staff and became the de facto head coach of Frazier in place of Durham, whose health was gradually deteriorating. A year later, the WBA stripped undisputed heavyweight champion Muhammad Ali of his title for defiantly refusing to serve in the Army during the Vietnam War, and Frazier was asked to fight for the vacant belt. However, Futch dissuaded his ward from this undertaking. Instead, Frazier continued to churn out victory after victory, and very soon he had 24 of them. Meanwhile, Jimmy Ellis became the WBA title holder, and Ali voluntarily vacated the WBC belt, and as a result, the organizations appointed a unification fight between Frazier and Ellis for the title of Absolute World Champion.
Ellis in the white, two lefts and a right. Frazier, stamina of Ellis.
This time, Frazier agreed and in formidable style won the belts, knocking out his opponent in the fourth round, but the public did not accept him because the true champion Ali did not have a real opportunity to defend the titles.
Another right to down goes Ellis. He is up. Past the man that's Frazier again with the left. Ellis standing there. Oh! A tremendous left hook. His courage is up. He is up. And the fight, Tony Perez. At the end of the third round, you went back to your corner with a broad grin on your face. You knew you had it won then, didn't you?
I know when I hit Jimmy pulling away, it feels like when you hit a baseball that rides down the open field. That's where his chin felt. So I know he had to get up, but he wasn't coming back out.
Joe Frazier was a tough pit bull, a little dog, man. Trust me, Joe Frazier could fight, dog.
Over time, Frazier decided to give Ali a chance. In order for their fight to take place, it was necessary to restore the boxing license of Muhammad Ali, which was revoked after the scandal with military service. For this purpose, Smokin' Joe decided to go directly to U.S. President Richard Nixon.
I helped him, gave him some money for the first time. I felt sorry for him. Arranging a meeting with Nixon was not difficult because I was the world champion. We walked around the White House garden with him, his wife and daughter, and then I asked him to return Ali's license, to which I received an affirmative answer. Did Ali thank me for this? I don't remember, but I don't think so.
I predict that when I meet Joe Frazier, this will be like a good amateur fighting a real professional. This will be like a kid out of the Olympics meeting the fastest heavyweight champion that ever lived.
In 1970, Ali got the opportunity to return to the ring, and a championship fight with Frazier was immediately organized. Despite the fact that he owed a lot to Smokin' Joe, he began to insult him from the very first interview.
You couldn't get Joe Frazier no box on this show. How do you feel, champ? I did run too much.
This is the biggest event in the history of the whole planet Earth. You understand?
I understand. Why?
Not because of Joe Frazier.
Frazier tried for a long time to ignore Ali's insults, but over time, his patience snapped, which marked the beginning of the most uncompromising confrontation in the history of boxing.
Believe me, this will be no contest to prove I'm still the best.
Their first fight took place on March 8, 1971 in New York at the Madison Square Garden Arena. More than 20,000 people gathered to watch the duel of the two main boxers of that time, many who wished did not have enough tickets. Boxers did not stop the skirmish even during the official announcement of the participants in the fight.
I'm the champ. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Ali usually go around hollering, he's a champ, and he called me a dumb fighter, but I tell him nobody never took my championship away from me.
Both invincible, both champions, they hated each other in their own way and waited for only one thing, the signal to start the fight. Ali was more active in the first few rounds of the fight, but then the initiative completely passed to Frazier, who was at the peak of his form, which could not be said about Ali. In the second half of the fight, Smokin' Joe, despite the terrible hematomas above his eyes, continued to put pressure on his opponent, and in the final 15th round, his accurate left hook sent Ali to the first knockdown in his career.
I saw this fight with my own eyes. It was the greatest event in the world of boxing. So far there has been nothing like it. Every time the bell rang for the start of the round, Joe Frazier kept going forward, and I don't think Ali or anyone else saw anything like that. He never stopped moving forward.
The judges unanimously gave the victory to Frazier. Immediately after the end of the fight, Ali was taken to the hospital with a suspected broken jaw. Frazier also had to seek medical attention.
Well, he came from a very, very humble background.
I don't care. He's the other type Negro. He's not like me. Because he's the Uncle Tom.
However, their feud did not end there, and 3 years later the boxers again met in a face-to-face fight, this time not a title won, in New York, and this time Ali celebrated the victory by a referee's decision. After a stunning win over Ali in 1971, Frazier fought a 3-round exhibition against hard-hitting veteran contender Cleveland Williams. In 1972, Frazier successfully defended the title twice by knocking out Terry Daniels and Ron Stander in the 4th and 5th rounds, respectively. However, soon there was a boxer who was able to cope with the incredible pressure of Frazier.
If I say that I was sure that I would beat Joe Frazier, I would be lying to you. I was the #1 contender. I had to fight him. I didn't want to do it. But I trained harder than ever and I found my rhythm. I beat Joe Frazier. But did I have confidence? No, it was not. At the time, I didn't have the confidence.
In hindsight, it's hard to believe that Joe was the 3.5-to-1 favorite. The magic of Frazier's victory over Muhammad Ali has overshadowed even the most intelligent boxing analysts. Among American experts, only 4 out of 31 predicted George's victory. The professional careers of Foreman and Frazier intertwined long before they shared the ring. Foreman turned professional on June 23, 1969, defeating journeyman Don Waldheim in 3 rounds at Madison Square Garden in New York. In the main event of that night, Frazier defended the then-respected NYSAC heavyweight title against Jerry Quarry. On February 16, 1970, Foreman won his 16th fight by defeating Gregorio Peralta over 10 rounds, again at the Garden. Frazier stepped over Jimmy Ellis in 4 rounds in the main event of the evening, gaining recognition as the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. The duel against the huge Foreman was supposed to be a kind of preparation for the champion's revenge with Ali. The event was organized in the capital of Jamaica, the city of Kingston. Why Africa? It's simple: tax evasion. This old version of the offshore fight had another good reason. The fight was the first ever shown on HBO. One of the organizers of the mega fight was a young, impudent, but not yet known in wide circles, former criminal Don King. Frazier, even before the fight, looked a little confused against the backdrop of a huge contender. In the first round, the champion went ahead and tried to overwhelm Foreman with his famous jump attacks. George calmly held the opponent on the front hand, checked the distance with a jab, and slung his terrifying right uppercut. Knockdown. Frazier made the same mistake that almost cost him the loss against Bonavena. He went on the attack instead of using the clinch, tying his opponent's hands and trying to recover. George gladly accepted the fight. His right uppercut nearly took Joe's head off with 20 seconds left in round 1. Second knockdown. The challenger managed to send the champion down again in the remaining seconds of the first segment. Fortunately for Frazier, the 3 knockdowns rule was abolished a few months before these events. However, this moment only delayed his execution. At the beginning of the second 3-minute period, Joe fell 3 more times. Referee Arthur Mercant Sr. stopped the beating.
I won that boxing match, but people heard about me knocking Frazier down 6 times. But people forget he got up. He was never on the canvas. He kept getting up. So this was frightening to me. The first time I knocked him down, I said, "Oh, he's mad. He's gonna kill me now." When they stopped that fight, I was the most happy human being in the world.
This gets me ready for Joe Frazier. He resembles Joe Frazier.
All night, that's all he's gonna be. All night in Malaysia.
It will be a thriller and a chiller and a killer when I get the griller in Manila. I know, yeah. I know, man.
However, all this was just an announcement to the greatest fight of all time, which finally put an end to the definition of the strongest heavyweight of those years. Frazier during this time managed to lose his titles to George Foreman and Ali to get their hands on them, knocking out the offender Joe in the legendary duel The Rumble in the Jungle. Soon, Frazier won the right to enter the third fight with Ali and try to regain his lost belts. Now it seems surprising, but at that time, the third fight between Ali and Frazier did not initially cause the same excitement as the previous 2. Ali at that time was 33 years old, and he looked worse from fight to fight, losing speed and his magical ability to come alive in the later rounds. Frazier was 2 years younger, but his peak was long gone. However, the fight was organized by the promoter Don King, who gave the world the Rumble in the Jungle, and after a while the audience's interest in the fight grew noticeably, although some skeptics continued to expect a typical money fight with a predictable outcome. But how wrong they were. The third fight between Ali and Frazier took place in the capital of the Philippines, Manila, on October 1st, 1975, and was later unofficially called Thriller in Manila. Ali did not relieve pressure on the opponent and continued to insult him. They say that he even came to Frazier's training room and shouted barbs right during sparring.
That sucker can't even back up. That sucker can't even dance. He's slow. He's short. He's slow and he's short.
Is everything all right?
Ali later admitted that he hoped to piss off Smokin' Joe and provoke him into rash actions in the ring. Ali's attacks on his opponent only fueled the interest of the audience in the fight. By the time the broadcast began, the total audience of the fight around the world exceeded 1 billion people, which became an absolute record. It was really hot that evening at the Coliseum Arena, both figuratively and literally. The temperature in Manila, according to the participants in the battle, significantly exceeded 45 degrees Celsius, and Ali said after the fight that he had lost weight during the fight at least 3 kilograms. The start of the fight was left to Ali, who, to the surprise of many, acted quickly and showed excellent timing, not allowing the opponent to seize the moment to attack. Frazier, with age, became noticeably slower and, against the background of a fresh opponent, could not demonstrate his trump cards. Ali threw a large number of punches, focusing on Frazier's right as the only one with which Smoking Joe could see fully. Already in the first round, Frazier almost got knocked down, missing an oncoming left jab. The ropes saved him from falling. In the future, Ali continued to increase the advantage and, due to fast hands, did not allow the opponent to reduce the distance. Frazier physically looked worse in the starting segment, but he traditionally compensated for this decline in the later rounds, and this fight was no exception. Frazier managed to weather Ali's assault, and the fight leveled off by the sixth round. Ali began to tease the opponent and shout insults right in the process of the fight, while the champion himself became much heavier on his feet. Frazier alternated attacks to the opponent's head with blows to the body, and to divert attention from the left side, he began to use his right hand. This plan worked, and soon Ali began to systematically miss the left hook. After going to his corner after the end of the ninth round, Ali stated that he was close to death. At the same time, Frazier's team was trying to get their ward in shape. His eyes were swollen with hematomas, his vision deteriorated significantly, and the ice that could have reduced the swelling melted in the bag due to the heat. Then Futch, who was preparing Frazier for the fight, advised him to fight in a more static manner in order to see all of Ali's punches and parry them, but this tactic went sideways to Joe. Ali got an open target, and Frazier, due to problems with his eyes, did not have time to react to the attacks of the champion, who had a second wind. By the 13th round, Frazier was almost completely blind. He tried to keep his ground and still put pressure on the visibly tired champion. Both fighters looked exhausted from the toughest fight. In the middle of the round, Ali with a right hook knocked the mouth guard out of the challenger's mouth, but he did not even notice it. In the next round, the champion landed several accurate hits in Frazier's right eye, and during the break, Futch decided to withdraw his fighter from the fight. Frazier expressed extreme dissatisfaction with this decision, and it is understandable, because it later became known that Ali at the same time wanted to give up the fight and asked the coaches to remove their gloves. After the announcement of the results, he threw his hand up in victory and fainted. Many years later, Ali admitted that if Frazier had decided to continue the fight, he would never have left his corner. After the end of the fight, Ali called Frazier the second highest level boxer of all time, naturally, after himself, and tried to rehabilitate himself for the years of humiliation and insults that he inflicted on him. He called Smokin' Joe's son Marvis into the dressing room and apologized to him and his family. Ali asked to convey an apology to Frazier Sr., but he did not accept them.
He said a lot of things over the years, but damn it, it's been over 30 years. I don't hate him, and why should I be angry? We have been through many battles, and now we are finally done with the war.
It wasn't until decades later that Ali decided to ask for forgiveness from one of his toughest rivals in public, and only then was their feud finally over. After the legendary Thriller in Manila, Frazier's career was almost over. Despite not the most critical age for a heavyweight, he could no longer endure the loads required to prepare for fights and began to think about hanging gloves on a nail. In 1976, for the second time in his career, he met with the former undisputed heavyweight champion George Foreman and lost to him by knockout. Foreman became only the second opponent after Ali, who managed to defeat Frazier. At that moment, Frazier decided that a boxer with his anthropometric data had nothing to do without his former speed and sharpness in sports. 5 years later, he would make a timid attempt to return, but that draw with Floyd Cummings once again confirmed the previous thesis, and since then Frazier has not entered the ring. Notably, Joe suffered from cataracts in both eyes. After his retirement, he focused on music with his soul-funk band Joe Frazier and the Knockouts. Frazier also worked as a commentator on boxing matches and starred in several films. In particular in Rocky, where Stallone gave him a small cameo role. Later, he planned to use the legendary boxer in the sequel in one of the main roles, but after sparring, during which Stallone received a severe cut, they decided to abandon this idea.
I admired Joe Frazier because there was never another like Joe. He was the one and only. He was the same for everyone. As a pro, Joe Frazier was the toughest fighter of my era.
At the age of 67, Joe Frazier was diagnosed with a terrible diagnosis, liver cancer, in a very severe stage. Sadly, the doctor's prognosis turned out to be, alas, disappointing for Joe Frazier. The disease did not leave him a single chance for life. Joe Frazier passed away days after being diagnosed with liver cancer on November 7, 2011 in Philadelphia. Such was the story of this great man. If you liked this video, then you will go ahead and enjoy watching. And don't forget to comment and share with a friend. See you later.